Okay, hello everybody. I just had to make sure that I had everything on like I am supposed to have everything on. And I am Dr. Annette Feravich, and thank you for joining me. I am here getting a little bit more set up in my little New Year's outfit as we end this holiday season, but begin a new year. And what are we starting with this year? We are starting with our theme is a healthy new you in 2022. And you can see my new theme on my website, Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit. And you can find me at www.healthymindbodyspirit.net. And there is my new website with our new theme, Happy Now You, Happy Wow You, or Happy Now Year, Happy Wow Year. Let me start that again too. Yeah, so there is my website with the new theme that I have for 2022. Happy Now Year, Happy Wow Year. And so what I'm hoping is that we are going to start now to really get ourselves healthier. Where am I going to put that today? I think I'm going to put it on the other side. There we go. Ooh, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let me look here and see. All right. Yeah, so thank you for joining me again. And I'm going to try and make this a whole lot quicker than I have in the past. I still have my holiday decorations up because, as you know, it is the Epiphany today. And no, it's not. And no, it's not. So, but I left my holiday decorations up anyway for us, and I will get them down. But I wanted to celebrate our healthy 2022 and getting healthier in 2022. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I wanted to get started with was just to remind you, what are we doing in 2022? And in a couple weeks, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be doing our healthy cleanse. So let's take a look at that first. Okay, so for our agenda that we have today, we have, first of all, getting ready for your 7-day cleanse. So I'm going to go through. Last week I talked a lot about what we were going to do, but it was a lengthy video. I want to give you a great summary of what you need to do for the healthy cleanse. We will be starting that healthy cleanse on November 24th. So it will be on a Monday, and 2 weeks from tomorrow is when we're going to start that. So I want you to try and get everything ready that you need ready to help you get healthy in 2022. We'll talk about that. But today's agenda really is about vitamin D. And I wanted to talk to you about what vitamin D is and the importance of vitamin D. And there's a lot of reasons why. Because vitamin D prevents many diseases, but also we're going to talk about the diseases that are prevented, but I want to talk to you just for a minute right now and point out something to you about prevention versus treatment. When we're talking about prevention, what scientists have found out is that it helps stop a disease, right? So it may prevent things like cancer, for example, and breast cancer or prostate cancer. which is different than actually treating it, right? Treating some disease. So some of the things we want to talk about is, what does vitamin D prevent? But we also want to talk about whether or not it is able to treat certain diseases as well. So let me give you an example. Does vitamin D help prevent cancer? Yes, vitamin D does help prevent cancer. But is vitamin D a treatment for individuals who have cancer? That has not been demonstrated in the literature. So that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about preventions as well as treatments for diseases. Can vitamin D actually help with certain treatments? And we find that that's actually true. And then the last thing that I want to talk about there is, I want to talk about some of the associations made between vitamin D and COVID-19. Now, these are associations that you're beginning to hear about more and more in the literature, only because they are indirect associations with COVID. So we're not talking about vitamin D as being a treatment for individuals who have COVID, although we don't know whether or not it would treat individuals with COVID. But we do know that there are certain comorbidities or risk factors that can be prevented with vitamin D that are associated with COVID-19. So those are the things that we want to start taking a look at. One of my concerns has been that we haven't focused enough time or energy or information or knowledge seeking on treatments for COVID-19. The emphasis has been on the vaccines, and we know that the vaccines have been very helpful in preventing great symptoms that go along with COVID-19. But what we want to know is, we also want to know what are some really good treatments as well that are outside of vaccination. Individuals are still catching COVID-19. They are still getting sick. And of course, we know that there's lots of unvaccinated people that also do not need to be vilified. They need treatment is what they need. Okay. All right, so let's move on, and that's what we're going to wind up our talk with, is taking a closer look at those associations that we make with COVID-19 and vitamin D. Now, one thing I want to say as a scientist that individuals sometimes have concerns with when they hear things like associations. And what we need to do is, we need to know that an association is made in many scientific studies, and we have to give those their due. Because, for example, studies such as studies on many diseases, such as or even behaviors such as smoking behaviors, or diseases such as AIDS, the AIDS-related virus, or AIDS virus, we cannot randomly assign individuals to different groups in order to study them, and therefore the only reliable studies that we have really are based on correlational studies or associations. And so we do know that they are very helpful. Associations can be very helpful in understanding disease and even disease progression. All right, we're going to be moving on now. What do I need for a healthy cleanse? And so this is what I wanted to talk about, first of all, to give you a summary of what is needed to start our healthy cleanse on January 24th. So first of all, what I talked about, and there are a few other things that I talked about as well. So I talked about getting used to drinking lemon water on a daily basis. What lemon water does is it gives you a little bit more acidity in your stomach, which allows for absorption of your food and your vitamins and your minerals. It also helps you feel fuller when you are going throughout your day. Secondly, make sure that you are getting your blood work done. And in getting your blood work done, let's take a look at what we need to get that blood work done. Right here, what I have is a list of the blood work that I would like to see individuals do. Now, if you go to your normal practitioner and you ask them to give you blood work, much of this they're not going to find, or you're not going to have. For example, very often we have to ask for a test for vitamin D. Now, many practitioners are giving that test automatically because most of us are low in vitamin D. However, we still might have to ask. And there's plenty of other things here that regular practitioners do not measure for in their blood work that's necessary. For example, if we want to take a look at your thyroid, we don't just look at the thyroid number, which is thyroxine, the T4, but we also need to know the T3 as well. So, and also your TSH, which is your thyroid hormone that is regulated in your body. So those are all measures that are not found in a typical blood work that's done by your regular practitioner. But what I have found is that I can request this blood work from my regular practitioner, and that they've always been very cooperative and in giving me the blood work that I have requested. And I usually get that request from individuals who are nutritionists, chiropractors, or individuals who are in some kind of alternative medicine. And so I get that request, the list of blood work that I need from a different kind of practitioner, a nutritionist, or from somebody like me. You have that list. You can take that list to your doctor, and your doctor typically, I have found that my regular practitioner that is covered by insurance will fill that blood work request that I have. And then I usually take that blood work to somebody who knows how to understand and read, like a nutritionist or a chiropractor who knows how to understand and read all of that information on my blood test. So those are the things that I would request that you have done. And as we go through here, you can make an appointment with me to look at your blood work and take a look at all the numbers that are associated more with nutrients and health as opposed to disease, like most of the practitioners take a look for in your blood work. Okay, so remember, you can come to me and I will help you take a look at that blood work, and we can see where to go from there. And in fact, I really highly recommend that you get that blood work done. And I highly recommend that you get that blood work done. And if you are having any issues regarding mental health, that you consider what the blood work says relative to your emotional states, right? Your mental health and your physical health as well work together. So I always recommend that I see your physical health reports and your blood work before we even get started in any kind of mental health direction. I know that vitamin D helps pick up our spirits. And so if you are not getting sufficient amounts of vitamin D, there would be no reason for us to look at some mental health condition prior to making sure that we have all of your nutrients on board. Think about it. When we go out in the sunshine, how does that make us feel, right? We want to bask in the warmth of that sunshine. What I have found is that individuals actually have a hard time noticing when they have low levels of vitamin D, and those vitamin D levels can fluctuate significantly before we ever have any idea that our vitamin D levels have changed. But when we become very intuitive with our body and with our health, what we find out is that we notice when we're feeling a little bit blue. I have all kinds of students who want to write on seasonal affective disorder, SAD, seasonal affective disorder. But the reality is that there are so many other things that contribute to that. It simply is not a seasonal occurrence, other than the fact that in the winter times we don't have as much sunshine outside, and so therefore we're not getting adequate levels of vitamin D. So please take a look at your blood work first and take it to your doctor before you start looking at what else might be affecting your mental health. Again, we know that vitamin D is associated with seasonal affective disorder, feeling sad during the winter months. And if we want to change that, the first thing I would start with is vitamin D. Okay. So get your blood work done. And also in that blood work, I did not see a panel for getting information about your omega-3s relative to your omega-6s. Now, omega-3s are your healthy your healthy fats, and your omega-6s are your unhealthy fats. And so what this blood work is looking at, it's the ratio of healthy fats to unhealthy fats. And so that's one more piece of your blood work that is not on that initial list that I have there for you that I would also like you to get. So if you would get your omega-3 values, which is your EPA there, and your DHA values or indexes for risk of high fats, right, which put you at risk for cardiovascular disease. So that's something we want to take a look at as well. So get your blood work done. And then, like I said, let's get started with the 7-day cleanse. And so what you want to do to get started next is, so get your blood work done, and we'll take a look at that blood work, but then do the 7-day cleanse. And you can purchase that 7-day cleanse through Shaklee. And again, if you take a look at go to my website and click on Shop Shaklee, and then you can click on Shop there again. I'm going to go through that one more time. And you can click on Shop underneath the Shaklee website, and there what you want to do is you want to click on the search button, and what that search button will do for you is you can go ahead and put cleanse in your search, and that will bring up the 7-day cleanse there. So that's what I would do to get ready for the 7-day cleanse. In last week's video, I talked about what is in the 7-day cleanse, although I do have to get that up and running for you a little bit. But what's in the 7-day cleanse, or edited for you, is in last week's video, so you can take a look, or you can go to my website and you can see there on each one of the links that you have there for each one of the products. You can see what is on the carton that shows you all of the supplements and minerals and all of the things that are in that supplement. So take a look at the product label for the supplement, and that will tell you what's in the 7-day cleanse. So purchase that as soon as you can, and when you purchase that, that will get you ready for January 4th, the 7-day cleanse. And that's really all that you need for this cleanse. However, some people may be interested in being ready for having supplements right after the 7-day cleanse. It's always a good idea to get yourself ready once you're getting yourself healthy. Because we're looking at a healthy new you in 2022, right? So if you are already on board to say, yes, I want to get this cleanse and I want to be ready to be healthier in 2022, then you might want to start with the Prove It Challenge. I talked last week about what that includes, but the big thing is it includes the 7-day cleanse, so you don't have to purchase that separately. It also includes your vitamins that you need, including your omega-3, your probiotic, and B plus C, as well as your multivitamin. We're going to talk why it's so important for vitamin D, your multivitamin, a little bit later on. So this Prove It Challenge, at a special price for first-time purchasers of $159, you get your 7-day cleanse, you get a 30-day supply of all the supplements that you need to get yourself healthy, and you get 2 protein drinks. And I'll talk later on about the importance, not today, in another topic. We'll talk about the importance of protein, but proteins are the building block for everything in our body. And so we need healthy protein development in order to, for example, to get ourselves healthier. They are the building blocks for any tissues that we have in our bodies. So when we have tissue breakdowns in our knees, in our legs, when we have tissue breakdown in our backs, what we need is we need more protein, because those are the building blocks for all of our tissues. All right? Okay, all right, so that Prove It Challenge then will give you everything that you need to get you started on a 30-day health regimen if that's what you're interested in. All right, so two canisters of protein drinks that give you 2 different flavors. It gives you the 7-day cleanse, and it also gives you 30 days worth of your multivitamins and other vitamins and nutrients that you need to feel different. Remember, and here's the big thing. Remember that Shaklee guarantees all of your purchases with 100% money back guarantee. We don't take anything for shelf restocking. We don't take anything for empty canisters. If you don't feel the difference, we guarantee that you will, or your money back. And that's the reason why I use Shaklee, because I have felt the difference. I didn't need my money back. But when I didn't feel the difference, when I didn't notice it, I was always able to go back to Shaklee for 100% money back guarantee. So go ahead and try it. Try the protein drinks, try the 7-day cleanse, and if it doesn't work for you, you'll get a full 100% refund on your money. All right? So it's worth the try. Okay. All right. So let's take a look here. What I have here now for you is the 7-day healthy cleanse shopping list. So let's take a look at that in a better format here for you. So on the Shaklee website, you can find this shopping list for your healthy cleanse, but I have found it to be really valuable. So here you can see it gives you an idea what you need to do in order to ensure your success on the 7-day cleanse. Now here's the sort of formula. It's approximately 75% vegetables and about approximately 25% fruits. But you can see here that they tell you the number of fruits and vegetables here that you can check off as you go shopping. And it gives you a list of those fruits and vegetables that you can purchase, but it also tells you how much you should have of those. So here you've got a daily value for your fats, the kinds of beverages that you can have for your beverage intake, the beverages to avoid, fats that you can intake, and even condiments that you may need to help make your food just a little bit more delicious. So the 7-day healthy cleanse, it's not, it isn't eating your favorite foods. I'm not going to sit over here and tell you that the 7-day healthy cleanse is going to be filled with all of your favorite foods. Of course, it's not going to be filled with all of your favorite foods, but when you learn how to begin to make meals that are delicious, I have a video out there for gazpacho, for example, that is great for this 7-day healthy cleanse. It's a recipe that I have out there. Look on my YouTube videos and like and share my YouTube videos as well. Subscribe to my YouTube videos, please. Because it gets this information really in the hands of all kinds of people who really need it as it gets more and more popular. So if you could help me with that, that would be great. So on this 7-day cleanse, this gives you everything that you need. And again, it's not going to be all fun and games. It's not filled with ice cream and steak and delicious food. You can see no meat for this 7-day cleanse. But I guarantee if you stick with the diet and you use the 7-day cleanse alfalfa that they have, the liver detox that they have in that 7-day packet, as well as Herbalife, which has a natural laxative in it, you will find that you will clean yourself out, and this is going to help you with all kinds of issues. As I said, I do this twice a year, and I do it twice a year when I begin to start realizing, why do I know I need to do it twice a year? Because I start seeing some things come out on my face or other places in my body that just it's not my stomach. I don't feel as great. I don't have as much energy. And I've noticed, if I take a cleanse, if I do a 7-day cleanse every 6 months, that seems to be the timeline that I can get my body rejuvenated. So again, January 24th, get started with me, and there's your shopping list to help make things easier for you. Okay, what is next? Next, what we are going to talk about is vitamin D, and that's what we are here for, is to talk about vitamin D. And so, first of all, what do we know about vitamin D? Well, we first started studying and looking at the importance of vitamin D approximately 200 years ago, and since then, we found out that there's great importance in vitamin D in that it not only helps with things that we knew a long time ago it helped with things like rickets. And what are rickets? Rickets are softening of your bones. And there are all kinds of osteo diseases that are related to the bones that we knew vitamin D actually helped prevent, and also helped in the treatment of those bone-related diseases like osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, which is a collection of calcium, which means that on the bones, which means that your calcium is not being processed appropriately, and it is being deposited then in soft tissue in your body. So vitamin D helps us process calcium. It also helps prevent things like rickets, which is also a bone-related disease, softening of the bones in young children. And so we're going to talk more specifically about those, but that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. And we found the necessity of vitamin D approximately 200 years ago. How do we get, well, before I say that, I'm going to go to something else. Here we have a quote from one doctor, Dr. Greg, I'm not going to say his last name right now because I don't even have my glasses to be able to see his last name. Plotnikov, that's right. And actually a German doctor, because that's where it was, not a German doctor, it was discovered by a Polish doctor, the importance of vitamin D. But here you've got Dr. Plotnikov, who is saying, because vitamin D is so cheap and so clearly reduces all causes of mortality, I can say with all certainty vitamin D represents the single most cost-effective medical intervention in the United States. So let's listen to what vitamin D can do for us. Most of the information that I took regarding this presentation, I've taken from my doctor, who is a chiropractic doctor and also a biochemist, whose name is Dr. Brous, who's been talking on nutrition and health for over 30 years, and you can find him on the internet under Sunnyside Health Clinics, and he has teleclinic lectures that you might want to look into on all of these health related vitamins, minerals, diseases that he's been studying for the last 30 years, and you're able to get free of charge if you get your timing right, his teleclinic lectures. I have probably over 100 of his teleclinic lectures in my library. So if there's anything that you want information on, just let me know, and I can help get that information. The other place that I got much of my information from was from this Dr. Holick, who wrote this book. It's called The Vitamin D Solution, and it has many videos out there. If you're not one to read a book, he has many videos out there talking about all kinds of disease prevention and treatments from vitamin D. So you can see there's a 3-step strategy to curing our most so a 3-step strategy to curing our most common health problems. All right, so that's the information I used in order to put this lecture together for you. A few other things that I wanted to tell you as far as vitamin D. So we know that in 2007, Discovery Magazine had the top 100 medical breakthroughs that were listed prior to that time, and number 8 that came through was vitamin D. Can it save your life? So number 8 in the top 100 medical breakthroughs according to Discover Magazine, as well as listed in one of Time Magazine's 10 biggest medical breakthroughs in the same year, 2007. And so we have got a lot of history that's related to vitamin D and a lot of information that I want to share with you. So let's keep moving. A couple other things that I wanted to talk about as it's related to what we're finding out about the importance of vitamin D. So first of all, let's talk about where does vitamin D come from. Vitamin D comes from, of course, we know the sunshine. What ends up happening is that when we get vitamin D from the sunshine, we actually use cholesterol in order to get that vitamin D into our bodies and processed through cholesterol in our skin that is reacting to the sunlight. But because of skin cancer and wearing sunscreen protection, what we found is that even individuals who live in warm climates, like Arizona, for example, no longer get adequate amounts of vitamin D from the sunshine. And so what we need to do is we need to supplement our vitamin D. Now, one thing is that it's very difficult to supplement vitamin D and get sufficient amounts through food alone. So if we are not getting our vitamin D from the sunshine, and we are also not able to get vitamin D from the plants that we eat or from the food that we eat, then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to supplement. Okay, but you say, well, Dr. Feravich, I thought I drink a lot of milk, and I thought that milk has enough vitamin D. What about dairy products and vitamin D if we eat dairy products? Well, first of all, we know that a lot of people have problems processing dairy products, and that has a lot to do with the things that we add, including hormones to our dairy, including the fact that we pasteurize it to degrees where we don't have the benefits in our milk that we usually get, including vitamins and minerals. And so what we need to do then is we need to fortify our milk with vitamin D. And so you can see lots of things, and you hear lots of other products. I heard mushrooms are being fortified with vitamin D. What does that mean? It's fortified with vitamin D. Well, being fortified with vitamin D means that it is a synthetic form of vitamin D. So it's vitamin D2 that we find in milk and other dairy products, which is a synthetic form of vitamin D. What we find in Shaklee supplements is that this is vitamin D3, and vitamin D3 is made from a plant-based vitamin D3. and it is concentrated. So not all vitamin Ds are the same. What's different about Shaklee vitamin D? What's different about Shaklee vitamin D is that it's not an oil. Many vitamin Ds are presented or administered in an oil form. And oil oxidates very quickly and easily, which means you're not getting the full benefit from the vitamin D. So please always be aware that you need vitamin D3, not vitamin D2, because that is a synthetic form. Our bodies don't process it as readily. And in fact, if you have a lot of dairy in your diet, what you want to ask your doctor to do is give you a blood test for both vitamin D3 and for vitamin D2, so that you can see if your vitamin D levels are due to synthetic levels of vitamin D as opposed to plant-based levels of vitamin D. Okay, all right. I think that that's good as far as a little bit of a foundation for what is vitamin D. Vitamin D, also for your information, vitamin D is what is considered a steroidal hormone, a steroid plus a hormone. What does that mean? Well, what that means, and this is why it's good information for you to know, what that means is that first of all, as a steroid hormone, don't really want to go there. As a steroid hormone, what we know is that that there are receptors in over 200 cells, 200 places on our cells. We have over 200 receptors on every cell in our body, over 60 billion, or maybe it's trillion cells, 60 trillion cells in our body. And we have got over 200 receptors on every cell for vitamin D. All right, so what does this mean? Well, all those receptors act as antenna. Now, there's actually, I just want to be careful about this. There's approximately 200. Some people say less than that, but we have many receptors on our cells, which are like little antenna. Receptors act like a lock and key, so that when we have got certain chemicals, they can be hormonal chemicals, they can be neurotransmitters, so brain chemicals. What they do is they seek out these receptors so that we can transmit information, right? So that I can get the hormonal information from this area to this area, into my bloodstream, into my heart, into the other areas of my body, right? So we need that. So we have these receptors on our cells, and those receptors on our cells help us pick up the vitamin D or any vitamin and mineral and put it in our bodies so that we can use it in our bodies. What steroids do is steroids are for of course, reproduction and fertility purposes. So, and vitamin D is an estroidal hormone. So what that means is it really is estrogen receptive is what it is. So it works well like a lock and key with estrogen compounds is basically it. Is what it is. There isn't an estrogen molecule, but it helps work with estrogen compounds that are put together to help with things like fertility, but also to help with things like healing. So now you can begin to see how important vitamin D is in fertility, right? But also, we can also see that it's also not only important in fertility, but also in healing as well. Okay. Let's see. Okay, and then as a hormone, it can also travel, as it acts like a hormone, it can also travel through our bloodstream. So now let's take a look at some of those things that are affected by our vitamin D. So first of all, what I want to take a look at are vitamin D deficiencies. So who's deficient in vitamin D? Well, if you constantly always wear sunscreen whenever you go out of the home, you are going to eliminate your ability for your skin to absorb vitamin D and get vitamin D into the system. So anyone who lives in cold climates without a lot of sunshine, those individuals end up having lower levels of vitamin D. If you use a lot of sunscreen, even in warm climates, those individuals have low vitamin D. Children typically, and in particular infants, have low levels of vitamin D. Why would infants have low levels of vitamin D? Don't they take their vitamin D from their mothers, leaving their mothers with deficits? Because our mothers have low levels of vitamin D to begin with, they do not have adequate amounts of vitamin D to then give to their child. So first of all, infants are low in vitamin D. We are talking that we need to give our infants supplements of vitamin D. We need to supplement our infants. We need to supplement vitamin D in our infants. Well, so young children also, children used to get out and play. They're not out playing as much as they used to. And as I've said before, they are also playing with sunscreen. As we get older, we need more vitamin D. So our ability to process vitamin D reduces as we get older. So we see deficits in elderly individuals, but even in, I don't consider myself elderly, but even in people my age, we see significant deficits as we get older. We also see deficits in pregnant women, as I've said. So the infant tries to take some of the vitamin D. We typically have deficits in vitamin D, and mothers who are pregnant see low levels of vitamin D. They have deficiencies in vitamin D. But also, after pregnancy, what we see is women very often in their 30s, mid-30s to 40, after childbearing years, have significant reduction in vitamin D. And what this does is contributes to things like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and other autoimmune diseases. We see that women are more likely to suffer from autoimmune diseases, and we see that they are likely to suffer that after or getting to the back end of their childbearing years, 35 to 40 years of age, and this is related to deficiencies in vitamin D. And finally, the last thing that I have on that list is individuals with darker skin, because we need vitamin D to penetrate our skin, and individuals who have darker skin have higher levels of melanonin. They have higher levels of melanonin. And in these higher levels, that darkens our skin. It doesn't allow for the vitamin D to penetrate through the skin. So those are individuals that have greater deficiencies. Let's take a look at this next slide as well. And what we can see here is we can see it's a great slide to show you some of the interactions that we have with vitamin D and that causes these vitamin D deficiencies. So here what you see is all of these factors that decrease our levels of vitamin D. So you can see there right in the center there, smoking, for example, directly decreases levels of vitamin D. You can see there that liver problems directly decrease levels of vitamin D. But then you begin to see other interactions. So, liver problems might be caused by alcoholism, for example. And this kind of thing also is affected by depression. So we can see here an interaction between depression creating this this loop, this vicious cycle. That's what I was looking for. We see that decreased vitamin D can be the genesis of this, or the beginnings of this vicious cycle, whereby decreases in vitamin D lead to depression, can cause greater drinking problems, which can cause liver problems, which also decrease our vitamin D levels as well. Here we've got issues with obesity. And so decreased vitamin D levels contribute to obesity, which also contributes things to diabetes. And individuals may then get something like bariatric surgery. When I have bariatric surgery, that also leads to decreased levels of vitamin D. So again, we can see how these decreases in vitamin D can lead to these vicious cycles that have so much more to do with other areas of health. So here we can see individuals then with Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, gut absorption problems, all can benefit from increased levels of vitamin D. Here we've got a vicious cycle of being indoors. And what we see here is that individuals who have darker skin tend to be indoors more. People with darker skin have decreased levels of vitamin D. Decreased levels of vitamin D lead to less muscle mass, which means that I'm also indoors more. When I end up feeling lethargic because of fast foods, this decreases my levels of vitamin D, which also leads to more sedentary lifestyles. Look at this. Air conditioning leads to being indoors more, which leads to this kind of decreased vitamin D. Again, staying on your computer, more people in office jobs, all of this is leading to a vicious cycle that leads to lower levels of vitamin D. Here we see that vitamin D is also then associated with things like insulin resistance. Why? Because vitamin D regulates our sugars. When we have, for example, we see high fructose corn syrup there, sugars decrease our vitamin D. And so that also then creates this vicious cycle where when we have more sugars in our body, sugars we know are associated with addiction. Sugars we know activate addictions like fats and carbohydrates do not. So if I eat sugar, it's going to decrease my vitamin D, which is going to lead to a sedentary lifestyle and an increase in eating sugary foods. So we can see here all kinds of vicious cycles that have to do with vitamin D. We know that individuals who are on cholesterol lowering medication, we need cholesterol in order to process our vitamin D. Our brain is also made up of cholesterol. So we need cholesterol in our bodies to help process many of these vitamins and minerals. When we take statin drugs that decrease our cholesterol levels, this also decreases our vitamin D levels as well. Okay, so many health conditions that are associated with vitamin D. Let's go ahead and move on. Now, I told you that I was going to talk about prevention, and I was going to also talk about then treatment as well. So, what kinds of diseases have we seen are prevented by higher levels of vitamin D? Well, the first two things that have been associated with higher levels of vitamin D is a reduction in rickets, which we don't hear of any longer, right? Well, rickets is a condition that's, again, that I said weakens or softens the bones, and we find this in children. We find conditions such as bowed legs, stunted growth, bone pain, large foreheads, and trouble sleeping. So here is an inexpensive vitamin that we know can help with some things like growing pains that young boys and girls have, trouble sleeping that older individuals have, and all of these are associated with rickets that we've seen these symptoms have been reduced. So using vitamin D for treatment because the symptoms have been reduced, but also using it to prevent these diseases in the first place. I have osteo there. We already talked about that as well. So we know that vitamin D is associated with our ability to process calcium and absorb calcium. When we don't have calcium when we have calcium that is not absorbed in our bodies, it causes things like osteomalacia, osteoporosis, and breakdowns, and our inability to break down calcium. We have also found other diseases such as spine fusing together because of calcification, or even hearing loss that's due to either fragile or calcification on tiny bones in the inner ear. So now you can see that vitamin D may be even related to things like ear problems in infancy. So again, we see these associations, but remember, you are your best judge about what is happening in your body and what your body needs and what your body can process appropriately and not. But when we think about so many bone conditions, how about bone spurs? How about, like we said, rheumatoid arthritis? How about bone issues in the, like I said, in the tiny inner ear, the tiny bones that are in your inner ear? All of these issues, back problems, can all be treated with vitamin D. It doesn't mean that it's going to cure your problem or take care of your problem or eliminate your problem. But what it does mean is it can help prevent your problem in the first place and reduce symptoms related to problems that are associated with low levels of vitamin D. Okay. We have seen that vitamin D helps with all kinds of cognitive functioning, including Alzheimer's disease. What we find is that low levels of vitamin D is associated with what we might think of as brain fog. We know that because vitamin D is associated with things like seasonal affective disorder, which is really a depressive kind of feeling, that has something to do with the way that we are thinking. We know that vitamin D helps with central nervous system kinds of problems, and that when we give vitamin D to infants, that we find that infants also are less likely to have I'm looking at my notes, are less likely to have neuronal related problems. So what do? We take vitamin D whenever we have any kind of central nervous system problems, but let's make sure that our vitamin D levels are up there as well. Okay, moving on. We know because I'm sorry. We know that because vitamin D has to do with insulin resistance and our ability to keep sugar levels low. We know that vitamin D has something to do with prevention of diabetes. Now, this with insulin resistance and also metabolic syndrome, which is also highly dependent on insulin resistance, we know that these processes are highly related to and regulated by our levels of vitamin D. All right, what else do we have? We have thyroid issues. That we know that some of these receptors for vitamin D are found in our adrenal glands, and our adrenal glands help us regulate our thyroid as well. So let's take a look at how these two things work. How does our thyroid and adrenal gland work to regulate our metabolism, to give us our energy? Well, basically what the thyroid does is the thyroid helps us with everyday occurrences. For example, thyroids have something to do with when I stand up, right, and the equilibrium is off in my body. The thyroid ups the adrenaline in my body so that the equilibrium is not off, and so that I don't faint and pass out when I stand up, especially if I stand up quickly. So these everyday occurrences that sometimes require a little bit of extra energy, that has to do with our thyroid. It's the reason why when we feel all worn out all the time, we wonder if we have thyroid problems, or we go to our doctor with possible thyroid problems. The adrenal glands get us ready for our fight or flight mode. So thyroid is like just basically the gas that we need to get through our day. But if I have to pass somebody along the road, I need an extra push of adrenaline is what I need. And that's what the adrenal glands do for us. So we know that vitamin D is necessary in helping us regulate adrenal glands as well. And this affects our ability to regulate our thyroid. So vitamin D is necessary for thyroid and adrenal regulation. Common cancers. We have found this, and many individuals have been reluctant to talk about the prevention, not the treatment in cancer, but vitamin D for the prevention of cancer. And we have found this for all kinds of cancer, including prostate cancer in men and breast cancer in women. Here is one report that I pulled for you. But there are many reports. And as I was digging through information I found reports on all kinds of different ailments that are helped, or we can benefit through increases in our vitamin D. So there's an article on vitamin D and larger intakes. We have a 2,000 international units of vitamin D3 that you can see there, and increased it up to 5,000 international units. And we can see that what we ended up having is great significant decreases in our cancer incidence, breast cancer incidence. So that's a pretty amazing finding. We also know that higher levels of vitamin D can prevent infertility and in a way treat infertility. What they found is there was a study, there was a zoo that wanted to mate Komodo dragons, and what they found was what they mated them, but the offspring did not survive. And so they talked to Dr. Holick about what his ideas were about increasing vitamin D for them in order for the Komodo dragons to survive, the offspring, in order for the offspring to survive. And what Dr. Holick had suggested instead was that you give the vitamin D supplement to the two mating Komodo dragons because they were not getting vitamin D through the glass case that they were in. So they were housed in a glass case. They weren't getting vitamin D. When they gave the Komodo dragons the supplement of vitamin D, they not only had offspring, but they had offspring that were viable. So this is a wonderful study showing increasing your levels of vitamin D might help with infertility. We talked a little bit about the developing nervous system. What we have found is that mothers that have low levels of vitamin D cannot pass off their vitamin D to their infants, and this affects the developing nervous systems of these infants in utero, and this seems to be related to autism later on. So we have seen great deficiencies in vitamin D that seem to be coinciding with great increases in, for example, diabetes, in cancers, in thyroid diseases, in infertility, in autism, and in autoimmune diseases. All of these are corresponding to decreases and deficiencies in vitamin D. So again, this was considered to be a scientific medical breakthrough. All of these findings that we're finding related to vitamin D. So I am encouraging you to increase your levels of vitamin D. Let's talk now about treatments. And the first thing that we want to talk about is how much vitamin D do you need? So let's take a look at that. This is a chart that shows how much vitamin D you might need. And what it does is it breaks down all different areas that are influenced by low or high levels of vitamin D. So let's take a close-up look at this. Okay, so there we have a list of reasons why we might need more vitamin D. We might need more vitamin D during the fall and winter. We absolutely need more vitamin D during the fall and winter. We also need more vitamin D if we are olive-skinned or darker. We need more vitamin D if we work indoors. We need more vitamin D as we get older. We need more vitamin D if we are overweight, if we don't exercise regularly. So not only just overweight, but exercising also increases levels of vitamin D. And if you live in a line between Los Angeles and South Carolina, so right here you can see where conditions are more favorable, i.e. more sunshine, to making vitamin D. So there we see the line, and north of that line, if you live north of that line, you need more vitamin D. And welcome to Michigan, right? We need a lot more vitamin D. Okay. Now we see here in the chart, there's questions. So, and what this does is it takes a cumulative look at the international units that you need per day of vitamin D. So you can see here, what is your skin color? If your skin color is light, you don't need any additional units of vitamin D. If it's medium, you need 500 additional international units of vitamin D per day. If you have dark skin, you need 1,000 additional international units of vitamin D per day. Now, there's all kinds of questions about how much is the daily requirement of vitamin D, but given that so many people across the globe are deficient, we really don't look. 400 international units has been the recommended amount of vitamin D, but we are so deficient. And in order to get the vitamin D we need into our soft tissues and the rest of our body, it takes a while for that to accumulate in our system. When we have additional vitamin D in our system, we can store that vitamin D in areas of our bodies like fatty tissues. However, we cannot store it for long periods of time, and that's the reason why we see so many deficiencies. We use that extra vitamin D, and most of us really don't have a lot of vitamin D stored up. And that actually answers the next question about toxicity in vitamin D, but we'll get to that in just a minute. The next question there, how much sun exposure each day do you get? So if we want adequate levels of vitamin D through the sunshine, what we need is we need to have at least minimum of 15 minutes in the sun. Actually, no, minimum, it's not minimum. Approximately 15 minutes in the sunshine per day is adequate amounts of vitamin D for us to produce enough vitamin D for our bodies to use on a daily basis. So if we get 20 to 30 minutes of sunshine per day, the recommended increase in just let me see something here. The recommended increase there is 0. So here, let's take a look at the top of this. Here are the international unit recommendations right from the very beginning. So 0, 500 international units, or 1,000 international units. And now what we have here, so that is the daily recommended for those times of the year. May, June, and July, no additional international units. February, March, April through October, 500 additional international units. November, December, and January, 1,000 additional international units. I already talked about your skin color. So if your skin color is light, you need 1,000 international units additionally. If your skin color is medium, now we are up to 1,500 additional international units. And if your skin color is dark, we are up to 2,000 additional international units of vitamin D. How much sun exposure do you have each day? If it's 20 to 30 minutes, 0 international units that you need additionally. If you get a few minutes, you need 250 international units additionally. And you can see how much the sunshine, even for a few minutes, can supplement our vitamin D. If you get very little, then it's 500 international units that you need additionally. If you live north of LA or south of LA, you can also see that we need more vitamin D each day. Higher levels of vitamin D each day. Here you have body mass. So here you're taking into account whether or not you have got problems with obesity or weight problems. If you are less than 25 pounds under normal weight, you don't need any additional vitamin D. But if you're 25 to 30 pounds overweight, you need an additional 125 international units. And if you're obese, over 30 pounds overweight, you need an additional 250 international units. The next question, how often do you eat fish or vitamin D fortified foods such as dairy, cereals, or juices? So you can see here, if you do it regularly or daily, you don't need any increases in vitamin D, but you do if you only eat it occasionally or you eat it very little. How much do you exercise? Exercise, if you only do it occasionally, you need increases in vitamin D. And if you do it very little, 250 international units of vitamin D increase is what you need. If you are older, as you can see, you also need to increase your vitamin D. And so what you want to do is you want to add up all of those international units together, and you can get an idea of the cumulative total of vitamin D that you likely need to stay healthy. And then we wanted to talk and just address, is there a problem with too much vitamin D? If you've ever noticed that you've been out in the sunshine for a long period of time and you kind of get a little bit tired, or you just feel a little bit run down, like you don't feel like doing anything, that is where we get high levels of vitamin D. And so that's when you can see or feel too much vitamin D. But what we have found is that we have got no cases of vitamin D toxicity levels when you are taking vitamin D at these levels. Even 5,000 international units per day has never given anybody toxic levels of vitamin D. Don't forget that you want to make sure that you're talking to your physician before you change any of your treatment regimens, but make sure that you're going to a physician who regularly asks you for your vitamin D, tests for your vitamin D, and is knowledgeable about the importance of vitamin D, because many doctors are not. So if you're worried about getting too much vitamin D, we haven't seen a toxicity case in over 100 years, and there may have been 2 toxicity cases that were unrelated to the levels that we're talking about, or the supplement requirements or recommendations that we're making. Okay. Some other things I wanted to bring up as far as treatment goes. We have found that, again, vitamin D is not just being utilized for the prevention of infertility, but it is being utilized for the treatment of infertility. Some other areas for treatment that we have seen. We've seen vitamin D helpful in asthma conditions and allergy conditions. That we have found that when mothers' vitamin D level is low, their children, their offspring, are 6 times more likely to get asthma. So we know that vitamin D is not only associated with asthma, but it is also associated with allergies as well. So increase your vitamin D. We've already talked about treatment for things like depression, cognitive processing, brain fog. So if you find that you have those things, increase your vitamin D levels. We have found that even from other nervous conditions such as Parkinson's disease, that increasing levels of vitamin D decreased symptoms of Parkinson's disease, including fewer shaking episodes and also less of the Parkinson's facial expressions as well. We have also found that vitamin D increases have also helped individuals with autism. And this is both in utero, so offspring who are getting autism, but also in treatment for individuals as they are growing, because it helps the developing nervous system again in utero. So increase, especially pregnant mothers, increase it. What about levels for infants? Recommended levels for infants are 400 international units per day, between 200 and 400 international units. For adolescents or young adults, we are usually talking about something like 2,000 international units, as long as they are active young adults and don't have any of the other comorbidities, such as obesity, high levels of sugar, sedentary lifestyles. But for an average healthy adolescent, approximately 2,000 international units are good. They're talking for older individuals, between 4,000 and 5,000 international units. You can get if you get tested and your doctor sees that you have low levels, your doctor of vitamin D, your doctor can prescribe vitamin D for you. Typically what they give you for in a prescription when we have very low levels is 50,000 international units of vitamin D. So that kind of can give you an idea of what some of the upper limits are that we're prescribing for individuals who have very low levels of vitamin D. So 50,000 units, that's about approximately 7,000 international units a day. We're recommending at most about 5,000 international units if you do not have an extremely low level of vitamin D. And remember, you're not going to notice the differences in increasing your levels of vitamin D for a while, because your body has to be saturated with it enough so that it gets into our soft tissues, and we may even have some in reserve as well, which is not detrimental. All right, last slide that I wanted to show you for today is I want to talk about all kinds of associations that I am making with COVID-19 and vitamin D. So what we have seen is that the risk factors or comorbidity factors that increase the likelihood that we are going to experience more severe symptoms or even contract COVID are these couple of comorbidity or risk factors that are associated with low levels of vitamin D. So individuals who are obese have greater risk factors for COVID-19, and we know that they also have lower levels of vitamin D as well. Individuals who are 65 and older are more likely to contract COVID-19 and also more likely to have significant deficiencies in vitamin D. We also know that darker skinned people are more likely to suffer severe illness and death from COVID-19. If you recall, early on, we discovered that African Americans were suffering from COVID-19 at a greater rate, contracting COVID-19 and having more severe symptoms at a greater rate when we were first introduced to COVID-19. So there are 3 comorbidities that are related to COVID-19 that are also related to deficiencies in vitamin D. And so certainly increases in vitamin D is not going to prevent individuals from necessarily getting the virus. But the virus does have to get into the system. There are many stops along the way when we initially get a virus. The first one being our skin, which is why the virus can come through, which is why the virus comes through our nose. So there are other means to prevent the virus from actually getting in the cells. One of the recommended treatments that I'm not going to name, but has been talked about, that has actually been restricted as far as getting prescriptions for, actually helps get zinc into the cell, and we need increases in zinc in order to help combat COVID-19. So these treatments are not saying that you're not going to get COVID-19. They're also not saying that you're not going to die from COVID-19 if you get them. But what they are saying is that we can see a relationship between many of the comorbid symptoms that we have that are risk factors in COVID-19 that are also risk factors for other health ailments due to deficiencies in vitamin D. So this is Dr. Annette Feravich, and what I am recommending for you right now is I am recommending that you take a look at Shaklee's vitamin D. First of all, Shaklee's supplements are scientifically tested so that they are in the form that is best able for your body to take that nutrient and use that nutrient. There are all kinds of ways that we administer these different vitamins, different coatings on the vitamin, different consistencies of the vitamin, and all of this has to do with an easier way to process that vitamin. Shaklee's vitamin D3, does not have K in it. You will find a lot of people saying, well, in order to process vitamin D3, you need K. Yes, you do need K, but here's the whatever. Here's the crux of it, that you need, that most individuals are not deficient in vitamin K, that most individuals are getting sufficient levels of vitamin K. We don't hear deficiencies in vitamin K. If you take a multivitamin, you surely get enough vitamin K in order to process your vitamin D. So you don't need to pay those exorbitant amounts of money for vitamin D that include vitamin K, provided that you have no vitamin K deficiencies. And if you're worried about it, take a multivitamin. There's sufficient K in order for you to process the vitamin D, for those of you who are curious. All right, so this is Dr. Annette Feravich with Healthy Mind, Body, Spirit. Thank you for joining me for this Healthy Now year, Healthy Wow year, and getting a happy new you in 2022. So next week we will be talking about, I need to fill that in. I think we're talking about gastrointestinal diseases is what we're talking about. So stomach issues. But we will continue on our Healthy New You in 2022 with more health topics next Sunday, hopefully at 4 o'clock. Thank you for joining me.